How do you keep empathy and fondness alive when angry at a loved one? How do you create empathy and fondness when angry at a loved one? Well, I feel like anger stems from us wanting to set a boundary or a boundary being crossed. So, mm, that is what it is. At some point, there's got to be a conversation around that, and we have to have enough self awareness and maturity to try to understand what boundary standard was crossed that made me angry. And then how do we have a conversation about that? How can I express that? And then, yeah, also understand, the empathy thing is do our best to be like everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. So, yeah, it's usually, yeah, you're going to get angry. You might have to take a sec, but there does have to at some point be a conversation about why you got angry, meaning what boundary did you feel was crossed or what standard wasn't upheld that got you so frustrated. And yeah, you guys got to talk that out. Ideally, yeah, how do you, if I got angry and I feel like a boundary was crossed, how do I talk about it? I got to try to understand their perspective, but I also have to communicate my standard or boundary, and I have to kind of know that. And I also feel like sometimes with this, we get angry because it's like, this inner child idea, someone in, something inside of us got angry. But also, no one wants to constantly hear, like, oh, like, because of my past, this is why I'm a bad person all the time. And I'm just going to act like a shitty person and then just apologize about it every time. And then that's like, nah, no. So, yeah, and ideally it's not that. But I think anger is deeply related to our primal instinct to feel safe. And so we got to have a conversation about how some, or because they're threatening the territory or putting others in danger or whatever. The anger came up, right? You got to pinpoint why you got angry. Was it some internal insecurity thing that you got angry and then wanted to lash out about? And is that more of like you got to have forgiveness for yourself and then, just say sorry to them? Or is it like you got angry because they violated one of your boundaries or something? And now you guys have to have a talk about why that's not okay, likely when you're not angry anymore. So, how do you keep empathy and fondness alive when angry at a loved one? Well, ideally, calm down and then have a conversation about why you got triggered. Uh, but I don't know if you can reach empathy while you're just red with anger. So that'd be my answer to that. And I don't have my iPad's dead, so I can't like push the button and show you all the questions today. So I'm just reading them. And it's next question 92. What behaviors or traits do you refuse to tolerate in a relationship? I feel like I've already answered a few kind of similar to this. So, I mean, I have to trust the person. So, and then what behaviors or traits do you refuse to tolerate? I mean, trust. I want to be with the person who has a moral compass rooted in knowing not to steal life, not to steal things, and and ideally wants to tell the truth. Um, so I have to trust a person. I will not tolerate if I cannot trust you. And then after a while, if it's all just like victimhood, because I understand we all need to vent about stuff, but if it's all just victimhood, I'm gonna end up leaving at some point too. Um, yeah. So that's what I refuse to tolerate. 93. How do you reconnect after an argument or period of distance in a relationship? I mean, you got to talk about what happened, right? And ideally, touch helps. So if you can have loving touch and you're not angry anymore at this, and then, I mean, from my perspective, it's always best to put the attention on them, right? Ask about their point of view, their point of the story, make sure they feel heard, and then, find ways to make that feel like it's been amended. Or periods of distance in a relationship. Well, just because the other one is after an argument, I don't think this means like periods of difference of like I went on a business trip and I was gone for a whole week. I don't think that's what this is getting at. How do you reconnect after a week-long business trip? Well, it's like in my head, hopefully she's just like super stoked to see you and missed you, and then you guys just end up making love that night. And if it's not that, and you don't have that relationship, then come home, take her on a date, and try something new and see what's good, and see if you could kind of find that spark. And I think kind of yeah, I think I'm also onto something too. Can you like do actions that try to ignite the spark? And can we do that instead of talking about how the spark is gone? I think that's there's something to there. I don't think anyone wants to go on a date and then be like, so, why aren't we been romantic? Like, I could really use some head tonight. Like, I don't think it works like that. So, uh, yeah, you just gotta create different atmospheres and see if y'all can reconnect. But if you really feel like it's died out, then you got to look at how much are you staying with this person out of fear of not wanting to deal with your own loneliness. So, and then even if you're like, yeah, that's why I'm with this person, you could be there for a long time before you're like, I guess this is so painful now, I have to deal with my loneliness. I don't know. Everyone's different. We all enter relationships for different reasons, right? But how do I reconnect after an argument or a long period of distance? How do me? Uh, yeah. Ideally, I try to listen, and then I will usually apologize, because if there's been an argument, then I feel like I got mad and angry and lost my temper and my cool, and that's not the character I want to be. So usually I'll be like, "Oh, I sorry, I got a little bit red there." I'll somehow acknowledge that, yeah, I was angry. And then ideally, I'd like the other person to talk and see where they're at, and then some touch. So that's the answer I'm sticking with. 94. What mistakes or patterns have you worked to change in how you relate towards others? Oh, this is, I feel like, a constantly evolving for me. And it's this: how do I listen more and talk less, in a way? At the same time, it's like I have to honor my own needs. There's needs where I want to feel heard, I want to express, and I like the feedback loop of another person. So, what mistakes have you worked to change in how you relate towards others? Um, well, and I think one thing I also need to change is more relating on like fun and fun stuff versus like not always just trying to be like problem solve guy. So, yeah, just being more me, and mistakes or patterns you have. Well, I also, okay, now it's coming to me. The one I think I see the most that I'm working on changing is I modify myself. I change myself. I put on a different mask to make the person that I could be hanging out with feel comfortable, right? And it's like not, I feel like I've worked less to be more authentic to myself, right? And to not be like putting myself in these situations where I feel like I have to do that. And yeah, so I guess that's the biggest thing, this kind of please disease. What mistakes or patterns have you worked, the please disease I've worked to change? And really that's just, how do you change the please disease? Oh, I see myself like wanting to do something to be liked or to get noticed or something, and then like it kind of sitting with that a little bit. Or usually it'll happen where it's like, oh, I'm doing something and it's like, wait, did I really want to do this, or am I trying to like get brownie points here or something, right? And so usually I catch myself in the act, and then I'm like, oh, if I'm doing this, then I'll start paying more attention to all my behaviors. And then I'll also remind myself, like, dude, you could just relax and be you, right? There's no kind of show that needs to go on. And yeah, I tend to have that thing about my personality. If we're all sitting around bored, then I'm kind of take on the responsibility of like, I will entertain us, right? And then sometimes I have to realize, like, people may not want that. They might be cool just being like, I'm chilling, bro. Yeah. So please disease and listening more than talking. And yeah. Or, well, I think one thing I also solved is, sometimes you ask a question or someone asks a question and then they start talking, then you cut them off. I feel like I've gotten way better about like talking over people or cutting people off, or when they're saying, and just kind of being like, oh, they're doing this. Sometimes I will have ideas though, and I'll be like, oh, what do you think about this? And I try to, yeah, yeah. And then I just also can find the point of view too of like, no, I'm actually genuinely curious, like how they might see this. And then if we have the space, it's like, can you explain to me why you see it that way? Because I might see it completely different. I'm like, what logic does this, what deeper truths does this theory stand on that they're presenting me? And so kind of going deeper instead of doing that whole thing. And then also, I'm thinking of it's like, yeah, how do I be a space where people ask questions and I don't just, shout at them, you should do this, you should do that, you do this, do this, do this, do this, you should. I don't want to should people. I just want to be fun, whatever, cool, and then be an invitation to a space where, if they ask a question, maybe there's insight. And often I'm thinking about how it happens, and it's like, usually I'm the one asking them questions. I'm just hitting them with questions and then get them going. So, and I'm happy to do that too as well. And I feel like, yeah, yeah. All right, next question. What mistakes or patterns? I feel like I covered a lot of them. And I think it's constant work to kind of listen first, talk second, and then also lots of work in progress. And then the please disease, right? And I feel like it's just kind of this deeper safety mechanism. And so there might be always a flavor of that, and it's not always a bad thing because I do get joy serving. Um, like just being a good host also feels good. So it's not, but there are times where I feel like I'm doing something I don't want to do just to kind of like, you know, be liked or whatever. And less of that has occurred. And ums, relating to others. This is all like kind of me speaking. Yeah. Listen more, talk less, ask questions. I feel like I've gotten good at asking questions and digging. And now it's like, how can I have that kind of play where I set them up to ask me a question in regards to how do I get them to ask me my perspective? I keep digging on their perspectives on how they see things, and maybe that's enough. But yeah, thoughts. Da 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 da. How do you balance togetherness with personal time in a relationship? I feel like this question's been asked before in a different way, but it's like your personal autonomy with intimacy, your togetherness with personal time in a relationship. For me, thus far in my life, I feel like I've been bad at it. I've kind of always chosen the togetherness over my personal time. And yeah, so I think to solve that for myself moving forward is have more group things scheduled outside the relationship. So yeah, there's just kind of a plan there because it's like my home life. It's like, yeah, I love it to be together time, but I also like need to be more serious about recharging my batteries and my alone time that I need. So I tend to just kind of, yeah, and this is the codependency sort of thing or whatever. Like, yeah. And I also think, though, it's like I've had girlfriends and then I've had a very chill work kind of life situations. So it's always kind of just worked out. Right. Um, but I do think, yeah, it would just kind of examining my past two relationships because my life has been so like more in the searching, seeking, questioning, curiosity phase. Yeah. And now I want to enter the practicing phase. So in that questioning, seeking this, I had a lot of free time. And then, you know, women are the pinnacle of beauty and I had amazing girlfriends. So it's like, oh, let's hang out. Let's do stuff. Let's be silly. Let's talk. Let's whatever. And then, yeah, I then I'd get to a feeling of like, man, it's kind of hard to have personal time, or like I don't prioritize it in a way. So, my balance is always towards togetherness, and I'd like to tip that scale in the other way. So, how do you balance it? I ain't got a strategy other than like do social things outside the house, so that way it's just, and then that social things, whatever, out of the house, or even like maybe I have like a journaling practice where I go to the coffee shop by myself. It's like I feel like all that's needed. And in my next relationship, be kind of like my routine is my routine, right? And I think, yeah, that's what I was kind of saying. I haven't had like a traditional work routine. And I was in this discovery play mode. So it wasn't like, in the morning, this is how I start my day and don't mess with it. And I feel like that would actually benefit my life and my relationships if I was more like that, with some flexibility. Next question, 95. How what are your tips for keeping affection and admiration alive in the long haul? Oh, well, first thing I would say is make sure you guys start off on fire. Make sure you know from the jump that it's like, whoa, this is fun. There's a lot here. And then I feel like from there, from the male perspective, it's like she's got to respect you, and she's only going to respect you if you respect yourself. So keep doing the things that you do that make you feel like you respect yourself. And I feel like that will naturally keep the affection and admiration. I feel like that was kind of the downfall of my kind of fizzling out is I lost respect for myself. And then I think it's hard for a woman to be with any man who's like struggling to find respect for himself. And yeah, that was that. So, and yeah, self respect. Interesting thing. Interesting thing. Self respect, because I could easily be like, what does that mean? And yeah, I think it just means doing the things that you know you need to be doing, which also means you respect yourself enough to have a plan. Well, what does it mean to respect yourself? It means whatever you're doing, you're taking it seriously. There's something that you take seriously in your life, right? And that's kind of that. You're like I'm doing this dead ass. Like that's you got that energy. So, where was I going with that? What was the OG question? Keeping affection alive, yeah, and then self-respect, and then self-respect is doing what you got to do. Yeah. What else about self-respect? Self-respect is an interesting thing because I feel like in various you can respect yourself in one area but maybe not so much in the other area, right? So it's like you might respect yourself enough to like have a very clean like, digital diet, and you're super conscious of like, what kind of media you take in. But then like you might also have like a late night snacking habit where all of your, self-respect for blah blah blah, and you said I wasn't going to eat it, and then whatever, it's a constant game, right? But yeah. And then how does that work in a relationship? Well, you also got to be cool with yourself too. So, yeah. Self-respect. Well, what are your tips for keeping affection and admiration alive in the long term? Well, now that I'm thinking about this again, maybe I want to change my answer to something more digestible than just like, you got to respect yourself. Because I feel like that's kind of ambiguous. And I think the other thing is like me, the man, I don't know about other relationships, but I'm thinking me moving forward in relationships as the man, it's like I want to maintain the sensation of momentum in my life. And I feel like that it's yeah. Whatever I'm doing, I'm taking it seriously enough where it's giving me this sensation of momentum. And I feel like if I have that going on, then the intimacy and all the other stuff will fall into place. Because I feel like tips for keeping affection, admiration alive, it's like women love to feel beautiful. So I feel like part of this is you guys got to be going to dope places together, right? Like she wants to be out wearing that dress amongst the crowd of, and, sitting in the cocktail lounge in Vegas or, however you're imagining it for yourself, right? But are you guys doing like fun destination dates, right? Or are you going camping and, I guess keeping the thing alive is you constantly have things that you're looking forward to. And then it's like, is the man taking an active role in planning that, right? So I think those are great things for keeping the affection, admiration alive, right? Constant things to look forward to. You're taking ownership of that and being like, I like to do fun things and I like to do fun things with you. So I'm going to design fun things for us to do, right? So I think that's part of it. And then two, you also have that thing in your life where you're on this momentum train, right? And I think that's the kind of winning combination. Novelty and momentum. And you guys just get a share in that, right? It's kind of a celebration, right? Because ideally if you're taking trips or you're going to fancy places and yeah, you guys I think part of this has got to play dress up, right? Like put on the suits, put on this, go to some sort of events, find things, even if it's like an orchestra or a ballet, just something where it's like we're wearing a suit tonight, right? Like, and we're gonna go drink some wine. Like you just like play play it all out, right? I feel like and then ideally that's a celebration. It's like because I have momentum in my life, we get to, yeah, let's go buy a dress. Yeah, let's go buy a suit for this date night, right? Like we're actually celebrating the momentum. And so I guess that's part of it, right? Because ideally now is that person in your life that affection, that love, ideally they're there because you love celebrating with that person. There's no one better to celebrate with. Is I like that. I like that this question brought all that out of me. All right, next question, 97. How do you reconcile differing personalities or interests in relationships? It's cool. It's all cool, cool, cool. But my big thing is like, where are our shared tasks? And I think like the question, like how ended the, oh, my nose is itchy. How I ended the question above is like, ideally your partner is your favorite person to celebrate with, right? Or you're like second, right? Maybe behind your like best friend or your brothers, right? But you love partying with this person. You love celebrating with this person. You guys have your own unique way that you're celebrating. And I think if you have that, then the differences and, you know, personalities and stuff, I think that can be dealt with, right? But yeah, are you guys locked in on these like kind of date nighty sort of things, right? It's and like what are you guys kind of obsessed with? Because if like she hates camping and you love camping and all summer you want to be camping and all summer she wants to be like I don't know, playing bingo. I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna those different like I wouldn't want that, right? I'm like to some extent like our interests have to overlap here, right? Because if I'm like so obsessed with this and I spend so much of my time doing this, it's only like makes sense that I have someone in my life who I share it with, unless it's like more work related. But like hobbies, yeah, I guess you can have different hobbies and I don't know. These guys were like, need time away from the wife, driving me nuts. It's like she doesn't sound that cool. But I also get like you need time with the boys and everything, and I think you just got to have a lifestyle by design that's rich, that's kind of checking all the boxes. But yeah, I think you can have differences, but it's also like where are the similarities, right? And how much are those similarities feeding you, right? If you guys both love camping and camping just both fills you up, then that's amazing, right? So yeah, that's kind of there's got it. The similar, it's not so much about the differences and reconciling them or the interests. It's just where do we have similarity, and when we are engaging in that similarity together, or do we have a ritual around that ceremony or that, yeah, that similarity? Are we doing it regularly in some extent with some novelty, and does that really fill us up, right? Because it's like, oh, we're doing tango classes and she loves it and you hate it. It's like, I don't know if this is it, right? Like, where is that common ground where we both are like on fire for this, right? And yeah, are you defining to each other that hey, this is like a core thing of our relationship, right? So then again, I've met some of my best friends. They met and they were tango dancers, and now they got children and they're not dancing tango all the time, but they still have enough similarities where they're finding fun. They like going to the river together. They love that with the kids. So there's other ways in which it flows. So there's just got to be enough similarity. Uh, but yeah, yeah, similarities matter more than the differences, and that's also like kind of my new thing, right? With like I feel like I've dated my opposite, so now it's like let's date someone who's more similar. um, we did find like activities that we both got joy out of. And I think also part of on me is like, okay, am I making it a ritual to plan those things out? Right. It's like, oh, we did this. We had such a great time. Okay. Am I constantly now providing those opportunities on some sort of scheduled basis, once every 3 months, once a month. And that can be like, a trip to the next town over, or it doesn't have to be too crazy, right? It's like paddleboarding or things. I don't like. There's ways in which you could do it. So, where'd I go with that? How do you reconcile the differences? To reconcile the differences, you focus on the similarities instead. That's actually how I'm going to answer you. Reconcile them, right? And if you can't find that deep meaning and fulfillment in the similarities, then you got to split apart. There's nothing to reconcile anymore. All right, next question. What spiritual practice or ritual enriches your closest relationships? What spiritual practice or ritual enriches your closest relationships? I mean, like, what, you eat mushrooms with your friends? That's amazing. You do MDMA with your friends and your loved one? That's amazing. I would say MDMA is probably like that will do some. That's like the pinnacle of couples therapy, probably. And then I'd like to try it with a little bit of mushrooms on top. You eat like a gram of mushrooms and you have a little MDMA in a place where it's all legal, and you just cuddle and play on a cool music. And yeah, that's what that sounds. Then you guys just like talk about your depth. Sounds pretty like that would do a lot of. But is that like a practice? Is that something I'm doing all the time? That's something I'm like, I want to have that experience. Uh, and yeah, spiritual practice, or ritual. It's like, what is this trying to get at with your closest relationship? So your inner circle, is there a spiritual element? I'm going to change this. Is there a spiritual element to my relationships that exists on my inner circle? And I would say yes. And there's this level of shared reality tunnel. The way in which we see the world, there's overlay on that. And our spiritual nature of it is rooted in the same thing of, in a way, morality is not relative. There's a direct thing with morality, and it's pretty much do not steal. And these people are all people of high trust, and in a way, we use our spiritual gifts on each other in a way. And like what I mean by that is we just kind of can share a deep presence with one another, and we kind of know it's all birthed from there. Sometimes in the stillness and intense eye contact, like energy is transferred, things make sense, you're forever changed. And having an inner circle like that, where people, in a way, they're kind of prioritizing, there's this shared understanding that let the mystery stay the mystery, and also how do we engage in letting the mystery come through us. I feel like that's kind of a common thread between me and who I'd say are some of my closest friends, right? And I have all kinds of friends, and we have different relating points, but I definitely feel very much so fed. And even sometimes my friends, where it is, we have those deep spiritual kind of let the mystery stay the mystery, and let's see what emerges, and let's hold a space where each other can express depth. Like that is cool. And sometimes we also have just joking conversations. It's not like our whole thing is like therapy sessions, right? And I think that's the cool thing about friends. It's like maybe we're playing basketball, joking around, talking about things we saw on the internet, memes, this, that. And then other times it's like being vulnerable. Hey, I'm experiencing this and I just need to get off my chest. And that's that. So, and then, yeah, if you can allow the mystery stay the mystery and more comes, then there's a magic to all of that. But I do feel like my closest people, in a way, they're all kind of are these seekers, right? These seekers, and they carry that energy with them. Curious little humans. So, next question. How do you intentionally nurture kindness and generosity in your relationship? How do you intentionally nurture kindness and generosity in your relationship? What? Well, ideally, the first thing on my mind is like the relationship ideally should naturally have these qualities exude out of you, right? I feel like this is humans in our natural state. Wouldn't we want to be kind to that person if they're a loved one? Wouldn't we want to be generous with that loved one? But I do understand this kind of question from like the other end. And I'm sure other people, my partners have felt this from me, if I felt it from them, of like, I don't feel appreciated in this relationship. The things I do, I don't feel appreciated by. So, and that's the worst, right? So how do you avoid that? And to avoid that, you probably need to nurture these things. So how do you intentionally do that? Well, I mean, it's like, my thing is like, what is getting in the way of that? So maybe, I never tried this, so I don't know. But maybe it's like, do we have a time where we're reflecting on our relationship and what we love and what could be better? And then also it's like, I feel like that could be a whole trap as well, because, it's like, now are we trying to change the person, right? And so I don't really know. Ideally, the thing that comes to mind is like, ideally, you're with the right person, you naturally want to do these things. And if you're there's probably a different issue if you're left feeling unappreciated in the relationship and you feel like, yeah. So intentionally nurture kindness and generosity in your relationships. Well, I also think of like playing win-win in game theory. In order to find a win-win solution in game theory, usually both people need to be vulnerable. So usually I'm willing to be vulnerable first, meaning I'm willing to be kind and generous first. And that's kind of, I'm thinking about with all my relationships, right? So I'm willing to play that first, right? And then I'm willing to see how that person plays their cards. And sometimes people see your kindness and your vulnerability as a weakness and not a courage. And if that's the case, then it's like, oh, note taken. And then I usually get, find separation, right? So, yeah, but I also have looked in that whole thing. Everything I just said is like, okay, what is my delivery style putting me into a place where it even seems like I want, I'm like looking for some sort of solution. And yeah, I also noticed this happens most with people I don't spend a lot of time with. I tend to end up here, but I think people who I do spend a lot of time with, I think they kind of pick up where it's like I'm just constantly asking questions, and I mean, I hope that they're picking that up. And I hold a lot of things loosely, right? Because I'm trying to find the pair to the paradox, right? Every truth is but a half truth. It's not black or white, it's gray, but you have to understand black or white and then you can see the spectrum. So that's kind of how my mind works. And how do you intentionally nurture that? Well, I just think of game theory, playing win-win, me willing to be vulnerable first, being willing to be kind and generous first, and then seeing how it goes intentionally. I think of actually a good example of this, like a friend, right? We went out and I was like, don't worry, I'll get your ticket, right? And then he invited me out again. And then and then I was expecting, like loosely expecting, him to pay, right? Giving back the reciprocity. Well, he didn't. I was like, all right, whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, get drinks or whatever. And he's like, oh, can you pay? And then I had like called him out on it. And I was like, bro, like, and he's 21. So I'm like, all right, I don't know if you don't know this, but there's kind of this unspoken rule with friends and reciprocity. So it's like someone does something nice for you, are you even thinking to get them back? And people pay attention to this stuff. So most of the time I wouldn't say it, and usually with my deeper relationships, no one's got to worry about that, right? Everyone's cool about being generous enough to pay their part or to do that. And it's also like now I have to see myself in that. It's like, well, how generous was I being in paying for the concert ticket, right? Was that truly a gift? Because why'd I still hold on to it the next time we went out, right? Like, you owe me. So is that my own thing to look at as well, or my own generosity? How generous are you if you're expecting something in return? Is that real generosity, or what is that, right? But I'm kind of also on like, love is unconditional, but relationships aren't. So this reciprocity thing, there is some, yeah, generosity, reciprocity. Where's the line? I think about this like karmic balance, right? And it's like I can't just like give, and you take. Then it's like it just the balance is off, right? So, but how do you nurture that in relationships? Well, ideally, you're only engaging in relationships because that's kind of baked into the foundation, right? Where it's like you guys connect as human beings. You feel like you have something to share with each other. And through that connection, that naturally creates a kind interaction, right? And then generous is like as that relationship grows, naturally you guys start doing things for each other, right? And I think we have to broaden our horizons at what generosity is, right? Because someone can be very generous with their time, their presence. Someone can be generous to send an invitation. Generosity isn't always just like gifts and money and buying things, right? So I do think that we have to take that into consideration as well. And there, yeah, but I kind of talked about this in a different question, but it's like all my friendships, I feel like there is some subtle awareness of a karmic debt. And it's like, I know in my head there's like some people where it's like I have a karmic debt with them, right? Like, you know, they scratch my back a little bit harder than I've scratched theirs yet. And it's like they're on my mind next time I see them. It's like got to take care of them, right? It's and that's like that's just how I am. I don't know if my friends even think that they're with me, right? They might just be like, "The heck, this is automatic." You're my boy. I take care, right? It's nothing to think about, nothing to thank. We're family. So, whoa, that was fun. That all came out. All right, question 100. What inner work supports your growth and maturity in relationships? Uh, the inner work that supports the growth. I mean, chasing that feeling of momentum in your life, right? And you know what I'm talking about, because I'm guessing that there's some chaps out there who are making 15,000, 10,000, $30,000 a month, and they feel stagnant. They don't feel like they have momentum in their life. They feel like they're on autopilot. So, what do you got to do to get that momentum feeling in your life, right? And inner work to support your growth and maturity. Yeah, there's got to be this inner work thing, because it's like, how do we kind of solve some of these emotional triggers? And when you're in a relationship, you'll kind of see your ways in which you get emotionally triggered. And then it's like, how do we solve that? What does the inner work look like? And I think it's a different journey of quote unquote healing for everyone, right? And I would just recommend people try the modality that they're called to, and uh, with caution, right? Be a skeptic and really feel someone's intention. Is it coming from the heart, or are they trying to, smooth talk you because they want a buck, right? And yeah, inner work though, I do believe in it, and I do think there's also just like a lot of I don't know how to not self-reflect, right? I'm just so far gone on this self-reflection stuff. I'm just like living it, right? And to the extent where it's like, I got to take action in the present, right? And not just be like, just a variation of Neverland. Ugh. So, what inner work? I mean, do the inner work that you're called to. And ideally, I'm moving towards this power hour thing. And if you look at the core of the power hour, you have pretty much exercise, journaling, reading, and ideally reading things you wrote or reading about your aims or your goals. So we had exercise, and then sitting, concentrating, focusing on your concentration, uh, inwardly, your breath, the peace, sensations, just holding a space of stillness to just, take a little look see, have an examine. We can live crazy fast lives, right? And just take that subtle art of getting uncomfortable, right? There's so much wisdom in there, because I do believe a lot of change happens in the discomfort. And then facing off with the discomfort, I tip my hat to everyone who can do those simple things in which they put themselves in positions to feel their uncomfortability, and then when they make it look like play, a whole nother hats off to you guys as well. And that's really the pinnacle of beauty in human expression. So, in a walk. Okay, yeah, my power hour morning, right? That'd be my big four recommendations, and or at least start there, right? I really feel like journaling. You journal for 30 days in a row. I mean, even one like heavy journaling sesh could just do loads for you. But man, journaling, I feel like definitely helps, and I feel like, yeah, well, that's just my advice. Um, anytime I've gotten like off track, lost boy, too far deep in my life, I start, I'm usually like, what is missing? And it's like, you're not journaling anymore. And then I start journaling some more, and then bada bing, bada boom. And then this might be it. Me recording might actually be better than me journaling, but journaling was where I started. And that's how I knew that, yeah, that felt sensational momentum somehow tied to just having that practice for myself. And I do know, like, when I broke up with my first girlfriend and we were together 5 years, like, I did a lot of self podcasting, and like listening to those is kind of hard because I'm in an interesting place. Uh, but yeah, that I just had to express it, right? And I feel like I didn't really have anyone who I could talk to at that moment, or I just like didn't want to talk to my family and or whatever, and trying to deal with it like a man. And I just like, yeah, the energy's got to go somewhere, so you got to find a way to express it as well. And then, this inner work thing is interesting because there are amazing therapeutic modalities to also go even deeper on all of this stuff, right? Inner child work, shamanics, psychedelics. Yeah. But I do feel like, what inner work supports your growth and maturity in relationships? How I'm going to answer this is the things you do daily are going to contribute to the most to supporting your growth and maturity in relationships. So, and that's the reminder myself, as someone who's in this process of building daily habits, and ideally these habits turn into lifestyles. And ideally, I'm not just doing this for 1 month, 100 days. I'm doing this for the rest of my life, right? And that's the goal here, because it's like, I know what life is like without that felt feeling of momentum. And honestly, life is way better when I do have that felt sensation of momentum. So let's design a life around there. And it's like, when you've had compounded inaction for a long time, kind of getting the wheels turning is a little bit difficult. There's like a learning curve, right? And I feel like I'm like hitting the learning curve pretty tough right now, right? And it's not. And even though I've tried to make it as simple as possible for myself, I feel like the learning curve is more in like the initial hype of like, you're going to do this and this is going to be great and this. And it's like, that is wearing off. And now it's like, are you going to follow through because you said so? It's like, because you said you did this, are you going to follow through? And then I'm sure on the tail end where it's like, oh, I'm almost done. Oh, yeah, let's go. Right. But also there is something to celebrate. This is 100 questions right here. And I think there's maybe, to answer these 100 questions, I I spent like an hour per every 10 questions. So maybe there's 10 hours of my content that now exist in a matter of just 10 days. So 10 hours of content, 100 questions answered. That's 10% of the way of my project done. And I also feel like some of my momentum, that felt sensation of momentum, to capture that and to kind of get me more hyped up to dedicate back into the daily craft, could be to finally post something, because I'm at 100 questions and no one knows I exist on this planet, right? There's not a video on YouTube. And so right now I am that guy who has all this ideas saved on his hard drive right now. And that's just where I was at when this came out. And then honestly though, the more I've watched my content back, the more my attitude is like, that was entertaining, just post it. Which is a good thing, because before I was like, am I rambling too much? Am I too much here, there, wherever? And so that kind of made me, it's something's changing, right? And it's on my list today too, to watch and edit content daily. And then the thing that's starting to eat me away, because I've had it written down for 3 days and not moved towards it, is my transcripts for this video. Can I play with it in AI and see if it can help me organize my ideas, or what can we do there? Because that is the real there's like there's a whole business opportunity in there. How? Because ideally it's not just me, but imagine anyone, and they don't not have to be camera all trying to look like, like the next, you know elf in the winter wonderland. I don't what am I saying? My nose is so itchy. People are gonna be like, dude, you always got an itchy nose. Like, dude, what do you do? Dude. Just scratch my bum, and I guess I touch my face, and then girls are gonna be like, "Oh my god, ew!" It's just a butt cheek. It's not like it's my butt. All right, should we be done here? What was the question? What inner work supports your growth and maturity in relationships? The answer that came to my mind, and as advice for myself, is the inner work that you do daily contributes most towards your growth in your relationships and with yourself. Boom, shaka laga 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 laga. All right, peace.